Hello everyone, welcome to Fableheim and the final dev stream breakdown for Age of Wonders 4, The Thrones of Blood. Instead of a dev diary today, we get the day 1 patch notes for The Thrones of Blood releasing on November 11th. Now, most of these are very similar to the open beta patch notes I went over previously, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are a few changes and new things that I figured I'd point out. I'll leave a description to the patch notes if you would like to read them in their totality, and of course I'll leave a link in the description to the dev stream if you'd like to watch that in its totality. It has more handy-dandy notebook stuff than it does actual pictures, but hey, there's a little bit of both. So as I mentioned, most of this is the same, the onboarding, the addition of the dark culture. There was a slight nerf to the Cult of Death's Tier 3 unit, which is not that surprising. The Death Stalker. Oh, there's a lot of death. The Death Stalker got his damage slightly nerfed. Maybe if I type Stalker, I'll find it. Okay. This is no longer 30. I think it is now 25. So there's just a slight nerf there. We figured that the Death Stalker would be pretty strong, so I don't think anyone is surprised. On the note of cultures, though, there were some other nerfs. For the feudal culture, the militia has had its defense reduced from 2 to 1, its resistance reduced from 1 to 0, and its upkeep increased from 1 to 4 gold. I guess the militia spam was getting a little too good. The aspirant knight has had its charge strike damage reduced from 28 to 27, and the Knight, the upgraded version, has had its charge damage reduced from 31 to 27, and it has had Giant Slayer removed. So it is no longer an anti-large specialist on top of just being a pretty good shock unit, a pretty spoopy one. There's also change to the aristocracy, but this is already in the beta. A slight nerf to the Sworn Bond, which is also understandable. It was really... I loved the aristocracy, like, tier 3 unit. It was really good. I always felt it was slightly better than the longbow. Although the longbow, you know, it has its place of amusement. Now, the other change was to... Oh, there's one to the Industrious. So, Industrious economic effects ended up being out of pace with other cultures as the game evolved. The extremes have been reduced a bit, while hopefully keeping their feel intact. Prospecting will no longer grant tier 2 items. I almost said units there. Gold reward range has been reduced from 40 to 80 to 30 to 40, and the production reward range has been reduced from 40 to 80 to 30 to 50. So they're pretty drastically reducing the potential of prospecting's economic boons. The Anvil Guard has had its base damage increased from 8 to 10, the Halberdier has had its base damage increased from 12 to 14, and the Bastion has a base damage increase from 12 to 14. So they're going to hit a little harder, which they desperately needed. So good. And the City Structure Town Hall 3 Forge Tower no longer grants hurry production or recruitment discount. A slight nerf to their cultural building. The Mystic, the Arcane Guard guy's base armor increased from 1 to 2. That's great. But the School of Summoning saw a few changes. In the beta, this nerf to me came out of nowhere, but apparently in like multiplayer and some smaller campaigns, they were pretty oppressive. And they've been rebalanced, and on the day 1 patch, they're also getting a slight buff to compensate for the, what I felt was a pretty heavy-handed nerf. So I'll go over all of it, just in case you missed it. Mystic Summoners have been rebalanced, removing excessive stat boosts that made them a mandatory element of any magic origin utilizing build. Astral Echoes are now gained only from the pickups, which must be sought out, instead of also when you research. Astral Connection has been reworked to retain synergy with magical origin units without excessive stat imbalance between this and other cultures utilizing those units. So I removed Astral Echo gain from unlocking research skills. The Echo Infusion echoes per XP cost decreased from 3 to 2, so you need less echoes to level up your units. The culture passive Astral Connection reworked to be more effective and play a bigger role instead of the flat unconditional boost formerly given by Master Summoner. So it no longer grants +5 morale to friendly magical origin units, it now grants +1 defense and +1 resistance to both units while adjacent to a friendly magic origin unit. This effect stacks. The hero passive Master Summoner no longer increases magic origin unit damage by 10%, and no longer increases magic origin unit HP by 10. I honestly don't know what it still does. The unit passive Astral Resonance no longer grants strength into magic origin units when casting spells. The combat spell Conjure Summoning Rift. Summoning Rift now grants plus 15 HP regeneration to friendly units in the province, and Summoning Rift now makes combat summoning spells 20% cheaper to cast. The Summoner. The Spirit Summon has its ranged increase from 1 to 3. It is changed from a single action to a leave 1 AP. Astral Bond reworked to instead grant plus 20% damage to the target and heal the target for 20 HP at the start of each turn. Oh, it's kind of like a Super Cultivator. That's nice. Added the new research skill for Mystic Summoners, the Scroll of Astral Connection, to grant Astral Connection to non-Mystic culture racial units. Updated Mystic Summoners tutorial. Updated the subculture description. So that was it for the cultural changes. There are some changes for heroes. Most of these were in the beta as well, but there are a few more. For example, the Dragon Lord Warriors can now use the Armored Claws, which... This is not the shock one, right? This is supposed to replicate like a sword and shield. The Spellblade, this is the one that really caught my eye, can now use physical ranged weapons. That's not a melee ranged skirmisher weapon. I think Spellblades can use like bows and crossbows and guns and the new flying dagger. That could be really fun to explore. I was already scheming some schemes about how I could use this. I hope this is true. I saw it in the patch. I was like, ooh, that's nice. I have big ideas for this. The Battle Saint got a few changes. Got some additional changes. So we'll go over the new Battle Saint. The passive Cleric now grants +1 resistance to the hero and adjacent allies. This is at the very top. They made it so Cleric gives resistance to hero and nearby allies, and then Paladin gives +1 defense. It kind of plays into it. The active ability Cleric's Favor has been changed from a single action to a leave 1 AP. So when you heal with this, as a Cleric, you will have 1 AP left to still shoot your weapon. Fantastic change. The passive Fervorous Disciple and passive Fervorous Martyr are no longer mutually exclusive. Good change. Cleanse has replaced Bless. It has cooldown reduced from 2 turns to 1. The Fortunate Support passive replaces the active ability support and grants +1 fortune on support abilities. The passive Healing Support swapped with passive Regenerating Support. And the active ability Warding Bond swapped with the passive Martyr's Blood, so they're just moving things around the tree a little bit. Active ability Spiritual Guide, new effect, increases positive morale gain by 50%. The Condemnation active ability has its ranged increase from 1 to 4, and increased chance to inflict condemn from 90% to guaranteed. This is on the right side of the tree for the offensivers. The Brawlers. Passive Defense 2 has been renamed to Greater Defense and grants 2 evasion and 10%, 2 defense and 10% evasion. Slight formatting issue here, but yeah, so the Battle Saint got buffed, which I buffed twice. I think it needed it. Hopefully it'll be in a better spot with all this, but we'll just have to pan out. After playing the Battle Saint as Blint, I felt that Cleric Battle Saint has a really difficult start, but once you get to its apex skill, you're in. And someone actually commented on that going further, where like the Battle Saint feels like it's not great for people who depend on like the hero's skills, but for others like Dragon Lords, Eldritch Sovereigns, Giant Kings, those who have their own offensive abilities or other skills that they can do built into their character kit, they feel pretty good with Battle Saint. So maybe that's the secret. But Gaius Julius Mento felt pretty good. Just running in there, the full Paladin side, being an obstacle and a thorn in their side, that felt pretty good. And a fun change for the Ranger. Go for the Kill can now be used while engaged in melee. That's nice. I think, didn't Spellblades also have Go for the Kill, and didn't theirs work in melee? Weird. Also, this was in the open beta, but the knockback snapshot now allows snapshot to be used within enemy zone of control, which is fantastic. You can boot people away from you. So the other change I'm aware of from open beta to live is the Tome of Prosperity. It got hit with the nerf bat a little bit. And, well, it kind of needed it. Tome of Prosperity. The Prosperity Dragon changed Mask Prosperity from transferring sustained damage with a 35% reduction to reducing sustained damage by 50% and sharing it between both units. That's still pretty strong. That might even be a buff, honestly. No, I think that's a slight nerf, but still strong. The enchantment Blessed Armor reduced resistance granted from 2 to 1. This is for the frontliners, the enchantment. The enchantment Staves of Grace changed Cleansing Rain from removing all negative status effects to removing 2 negative status effects. This would have just destroyed the Cult of Tyranny. So I kind of understand why this had to be done, but this was very strong. And my favorite combat spell, Grant Protection, reduced bolster defense granted from 3 to 2, reduced bolster resistance granted from 3 to 2. That's not that big of a deal, it's just a slight nerf. But of course, one of the reasons to cast Grant Protection is not really the defense, although that's great. It's also for the bolstering lens, so that has been unchanged. And the Sea Structure Garden of Affluence reduced gold income per farm/forester from 3 to 2. Slight nerf on the SPI. It's still a great SPI. I would still build it, which is a lot about an SPI. Because I don't always build those. Yeah, slight nerf to the Prosperity Tome. I think it's still a great tome. I think you still take it if you are doing order stuff, really. I don't really know how I feel about it as a nature, like seeing it as a nature build. It feels like an order tome. But with that, those are all of the things I could tell that were changed from the open beta to the live version that I felt like addressing. Of course, there are tons of fixes as well that are being added in from your feedback, and the developers are still reading your beta feedback, which will help determine the day 1 patch and the 1.1, the 1.2, all that stuff. So continue providing it if you are participating. And the day 1 patch will be the day after, so the 12th, I think, will be whatever patch they're working on, because this is the day 1 patch, so it's already ready to go once they're all approved for release. All right, and with that, we head on to the pretty pictures of the dev stream. Now, most of this we have seen before in one place or another, but just showcasing what I noticed and anything that could possibly be new to you. So they did finally get Vampiric Flight. This is the apex talent of the Vampiric Tree. When not mounted, this unit gains flying, fast movement, and 20% evasion against physical ranged and magical attacks. This has a unique animation where you turn into kind of like a smoke of bats and fly through stuff. That is relevant because it was broken. It's going to be great, don't worry. While he was going through the map, you already joined him. The mechanical strong room, I didn't recognize this. What was I trying to say? Mechanical? Professor Mechanical. The mechanical strong room, is that a new variant of this wonder? I was trying to think of it, and I don't remember seeing that, but who knows? Maybe it is not. She looks cool. I was really not finding pictures. So I was like, hey, that's the Torment transformation. It looks cool, doesn't it? Yeah. They completed the Prophecy, which is not new, but they did it. I told you I was lacking pictures. This is like the second to final battle. But remember when I mentioned she turns into a smoke of bats and flies forward? Well, there was a bug where she turned into one bat, and this is her. So that was fun. And then you already showed off another bug. As you can see, this one was wholly intentful. You can, what was it? You can decrease the safe area ratio to 90%, and then the UI will just be like an overlay. Just be an overlay you can move around. It was really funny. I don't know if that'll be fixed. You already said it wasn't really impact anything, so. And then at the very end, they showed off the Tome of Crimson Rain. Of course, we've seen some of these from the Dev Diary Tome, but this went over everything and all the numbers and stuff, which we were lacking a little bit. So Tears of the Crimson Sovereign is a combat enchantment. So when you cast this, And for the next 2 turns, up to 3 enemies will sustain 10 physical damage and have a base 90% chance of gaining Blood Parasite for 3 turns. Up to 3 friendly units will heal for 10 temporary hit points and gain Fortune for 3 turns. Pretty good. Not too shabby. The Mantle of the Noble Blood is very spicy. This is an enchantment that affects tier 3, 4, and 5 units. They will gain Coagulate, which gives them bolster defense and bolster resistance when they are attacked, once per turn. And at the start of combat, for each friendly non-summon tier 1 and tier 2 unit, they gain plus 5 hit points and plus 5% healing received in combat. And of course, if they're cultural units of any variety or the Blood Exarch, they will have the Gift of the Old Blood, if you use this transformation, I suppose. This turns them undead, grants them Life Streaker, and base attacks have a base 60% chance of inflicting Blood Parasite for 3 turns. This effect is increased for single-shot attacks. So, I had a little bit of a discussion with some people on whether Whiteborn would be kind of invalidated by this new fancy major transformation, but there were a lot of great points brought up that it won't be. Because 1, Whiteborn gives Life Steal, which is you heal when you hit, it's 5, and it's 10 if it's a single shot, whereas the healing from this one is Life Drinker. So you need something adjacent to you to die, you'll gain Strengthen, and you'll heal for 10. So it's less sustain, you're still undead, and you have the Blood Parasite thing as well. But also, the difference between a tier 3 tome and a tier 4 tome can be a very big difference. And so, I'm pretty happy with how this all panned out, honestly. And I'm excited to try the Tome of the Crimson Rain, the Gift of the Old Blood, very soon. The Crimson Court is a city structure that can only be built in your throne city. Your tier 3, 4, and 5 units you own gain plus 5 a hit point regeneration on the world map, and gain 2 experience per turn on the world map. That is going to be spicy. Finally, Legend Elite high tier units relatively quickly. That's pretty good. Stack that with a champion and you are flying. It also grants you a Crimson Court Magistrate, letting you gain mana on something when migrating, raising, or pillaging. So you gain 50 mana on successful pillaging a province improvement, 50 mana on successfully raising a conquered city per population and province improvement that has not been pillaged, gain 30 mana on successfully migrating a conquered city per population, but the city loses additional population afterwards, and vassals grant 10 mana income per population. This is going to help out a lot with mana, because you're probably going to be, casting stuff a lot with the Crimson Sovereign tiers, and of course summoning the Blood Exarch. 300 mana. This is a spooky tier 5 unit. We'll look at him in a second. But they were kind of showcasing what the Gift of the Old Blood looks like. Basically turns your skin dark and you have these very obvious blood circulations around you. This is the Mantle of the Blood Noble. It'll be on tier 3, 4, and 5 units unless you turn it off. It's basically just like a blood cape. I only got one picture of it, but it looks pretty cool. And this is a war breed with Gift of the Old Blood. Making spooky. And here is the Blood Exarch. We did get a look at him in the dev diary, but here's just another look with some numbers. The Parasitic Cleave, 22 damage, repeating deal damage to units in a 1 hexagon. Repeating cleaves. That, of course, inflicts Blood Parasite with a 90% chance, which is not too shabby. The Siphoned Lesser is 33 damage, 1 AP, 4 range. Target unit sustains damage. Damage increases by 10 physical damage for each unit tier of the target below 5. So with no mitigation, 43 at tier 4, 53 at tier 3, 63 at tier 2, 73 at tier 1. That's kind of spooky. And the Blood Exarch heals for 50% of the damage dealt to the target. If this ability kills the target, reset the cooldown on the Grant Blood of the Exarch, which is a free action buff. The target-friendly tier 3 or higher unit gains Blood of the Exarch until the end of combat. Unit has plus 20% damage, plus 10% critical hit chance, and plus 25% critical hit damage. And his last ability is the Blood Pull, which is a free action. 11 damage for range. Target enemy unit sustains damage and is pulled to adjacent hex with a 1-turn cooldown. I think this is going to be pretty spooky to fight. I commented he could be the most powerful tier 5, and then someone said he had nothing on the Fallen Angel. So, that's going to be fun. I kind of want to There's some videos I've seen for like RTSs, like really high-end RTSs, where every unit has to be maximally efficient, and they have like a single model of these units fight to see which one's better. Of like what was the one I was thinking of? Like a Nob, a greenskin Nob, an Orc Nob versus a like Space Marine Terminator or something. You know, something like that. What if we did one of those with Fallen Angel? It'd be really funny. But I think the Fallen Angel's more, I mean, he's damaged, but he's more support too, right? Whatever, it's fine. And that is the Shade, which of course leaves us with the handy dandy notebook. Now, this stream was mostly the handy dandy notebook. There's a lot to go through here. So Future Fade may insert some footage, he may not. Depends how he's feeling in, I don't know, 20 minutes. So, while Age of Wonders 4 primary audience is single player, hi, it's me, Triumph does see multiplayer as an important aspect of the game and is continually working to improve the system. Unfortunately, some of the problems are just kind of how the game is, and, you know, using peer-to-peer always presents more problems on top of already lingering problems. So some things may always be quirky, but they do think of you multiplayer enjoyers, and they're trying. Thomas is interested in adding single shot to the Reaver cannon unit, but couldn't do it in this patch. Someone asked about it specifically. And you know what, deserves single shot. I'm honestly shocked it didn't have it yet. Armor of Contempt for the Tyrant Guard scales with each individual debuff stack. So 5 stacks of bleeding will count the same as if you had 5 different debuffs. So it's very easy to get to that 5 debuff cap to benefit maximally from the Armor of Contempt. Torment does not trigger on movement, but it does trigger on each repeating attack. So Thomas mentioned that it would trigger on movement. It does not. You can move freely and not be tormented, but if you have a repeating attack and you hit 3 times on somebody, that torment is triggering 3 times if you have 3 stacks. The Elder Vampires can build the Desecration Chamber in any city of any culture. This is the building that spreads sunless terrain around you. You can build it in any city as long as the ruler who owns it is an Elder Vampire. Thomas and a few other developers are interested in expanding diplomatic actions. The question was specifically about gifting cities to allies, but he's not sure when they will have resources to devote to it. Dual-wielding weapons, scythes, and a proper assassination shanking dagger are weapon types that Thomas would like to add, but they currently are limited by animation budget. So we may see them, we may not. Someone asked about unique wizard towers for other ruler types, like a dragon lair for the Dragon Lord, but that is not going to happen. The Elder Vampires are balanced around the inclusion of their unique vampire castle, and the other ruler types are not. In the case of the questioned Dragon Lords, their power comes specifically from the combat prowess of the ruler itself. Blood Exarchs, hey, he's on screen. Maybe. Who knows if Future Viv did. Came about because artists, I'm quoting here, artists are crazy and wanted to make something cool. Unquote. And it was a nightmare for animation rigging. I believe that. They're cool looking. Someone asked about how the Dark Culture no longer gives you evil alignment just for picking it. And they were designed that way because it kind of fit their vibe at the time, but the developers have changed their approach to cultures. And the reworked Dark Culture naturally pulls you towards an evil playstyle, but players should, and will now have, the freedom to choose how to play. It also makes more sense for like the society traits to decide your alignment rather than the baseline culture to decide your alignment. Good alignment has also been removed from the high culture in the dev build. I'm not sure if that's live yet. Maybe going live on the 11th. They talked about it. Now, here's one that's going to hurt me. Someone asked about building a city on a mountain or like building roads through it. And you already answered this. It is not possible to allow city building on mountains. In the back end, if a province center tile is obstructed, then you can't do anything on it. He said road building is weird on mountains, so that wasn't going to happen. And he mentioned that mountains were meant to be like a blocker. So it sounds like mountain building or construction of any kind isn't coming anytime soon, much to my sadness. Yordi mentioned creating a case, just like a save file to send to someone to investigate, to further investigate shapeshifting for rulers and heroes. If they can resolve the whole instantly losing the game problem, we may one day have shapeshifting. It could be fun. The game's modularity is a nightmare on the back end, as Yordi said modders can attest to. There is some sort of impactful balance change being worked on. I couldn't quite catch what Yordi said. His mic was quieter than Thomas's and the game. But he wanted to get a build going for Thomas to test some sort of balance build that was without something. And he said it would be impactful. He was specifically talking about multiplayer though, so I'm not sure if it's like a multiplayer change that's impactful or just a general change. Hard to say. Turned vampires do not get racial transformations. However, they will keep any that they had before they were turned. So, if you have a level 1 hero, like your very first hero you get for your culture will most likely never have any major transformations. But if you get a cultural hero later on, when you've like gone through the tomes, he will have any transformations your culture had before you turned him. I hope that makes sense. The nomad culture, they're kind of joking about leaks, but the nomad culture is in fact nomadic and not buildy. They actually just before the stream had a meeting about like where they were in Rise from Ruin and what they needed to get done to get a playable build on their end to get started on it really. And then Yordi jokingly threatened talking about a unit revamp. I don't know what that is, but I am interested. And then they kind of got into a conversation about the high culture, because people are very interested in a high culture rework now that the dark culture got one. And there is a change coming to the high culture soon TM that Thomas couldn't talk about, but it's not the rework. Because Thomas has a document of all of his ideas for potential reworks for the cultures, but his initial concept for a high culture rework was robbed by the Oath Sworn. And he actually went into a little bit of detail. His idea was that the high culture would have infinite ranks, quote unquote, at the end. And they'd have to pick an oath every so often that upon completion would buff a certain unit type. An example that he gave was, I vow to take insert city within 10 turns. And then you would get a buff for one type of unit and some diplomatic-based rewards. The idea was that this would kind of shoehorn you into a direction, but it thematically represented how the high culture was dedicated to upholding its proclaimed tenets or duties or what have you. But of course, elves are kind of a thing now. So, not that idea. Then Yordi mentioned that any rework to the high culture had to wait until they figured out what to do with the city stability aspect of the high culture. Just you get a boon of some kind whenever you're prime good or prime evil. And when Thomas created it, he envisioned them kind of as extremists who benefited from committing to one alignment or another. So you got pretty decent boons, but you had to go all in either direction. But he and others feel it doesn't quite play out that way in game, and I would agree. I'm inclined to agree. Thomas unironically believes that a romance DLC could work, but has no idea if they'll be able to do it. I'm not sure if that was will we get permission to do this, or will it be possible to do this? Could be both, honestly. In the meantime, the story realm for Thrones of Blood is the unofficial romance DLC. And last, but certainly not least, they were kind of talking about a Pantheon update, but there were no specifics said whatsoever. It was just that, I think Yordi said that Thomas would have to do a Pantheon update, and Thomas said, I'm working on a Pantheon. I mean, you know, he'd be the one working on it. Maybe he is working on it. I don't know. I think we're still stuck eternally with 50 characters, but we'll see. Hopefully they can pull out a miracle, because I'm going to be reaching that cap sooner rather than later. But that, my friends, was it for the final dev stream breakdown. You can find a link in the description to the patch notes if you would like to read them for yourself. So the Gargoyle update is coming. Or, of course, the dev stream if you'd like to watch it for yourself. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to say up to the channel, feel free to run description down below. Thanks to the patrons of the Channel Sports channel. I greatly appreciate you. And I will see you on November 11th with a very special video. Bye-bye.
Now there's a thought. We could flay these petulant, small-minded creatures and use their bones to pave the path for our ascension. What to do, what to do.